History laid the foundation
that informs our conversation. Welcome to the classroom.
From the church to the streets, and even in the suites, and all around the world. I'm gonna keep it real in the classroom.
Fannie Lou's classroom. Fannie Lou's classroom. Fannie Lou's classroom.
Good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of Fannie Lou's Classroom, the space where we have all kinds of conversations around critical issues, but also things that are important for us to talk about as a community, where we deal with the intersection of faith, politics, and gender and race. And so we try to have some substantive conversation, but do it in a way that's very organic, in a way for all of us to engage in conversation that we might leave here not only better, but leave here knowing there's something for us to do individually and collectively as a community. And so I'm super excited about the conversation on today. But before I get to that, I always got to shout out the FLC team that makes this happen from week to week. That's Cheryl, Brooke, and Ashley. They make sure that all of our speakers are well taken care of. Brooke makes sure we look good on YouTube and handles all of our audio visual. So we're super excited about that. Now to our guests. I'm going to do a brief bio sketch, and you can go into the description on the YouTube channel and get the full bios of each of the guests on today. So first we have my good sister, co-laborer in the ministry, womanist, race woman, all things, Reverend Stacey Brown. She is a business owner, mental health advocate, and activist, an ordained minister, speaker, and a mother of three. She has spoken at numerous churches and organizations throughout the country. Her personal experience with mental health and ministry allow her a unique perspective on crafting plans for clients to gain mental and maintain mental wellness. Let's welcome the Reverend Stacey D. Brown to Fannie Lou's Classroom.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me.
And then we have one who's not a stranger at all, not only to Friendship West, but to Fannie Lou's Classroom. He was with us on last week and a few seasons ago. So we're welcoming back this week my good friend and my brother, the pastor, Dameon E. Madison.
Amen.
He is a native of Chicago who possesses a heart for humanity and social change. He's a graduate of Talladega College, where he was featured in Ebony magazine in 1997 in The New Generation Speaks Out. Student leaders discuss racism, love, sex, and the black male, black female thing. That was the name of the episode or the article. All right. And so he also received his, he attended Liberty University Baptist Theological Seminary, where he had graduate studies in church leadership. Pastor Madison also currently is the principal at DEM Ministries and Strategy Solutions and the founder and pastor of Village at the Life Community Fellowship Church. He additionally serves as the project manager for the Better Together initiative at the Martin Luther King Jr. Center for Nonviolent Social Change in Atlanta, Georgia, a project designed to reconnect and empower the faith community to engage in social change work. Let's welcome back to the classroom Reverend Dameon Madison, also known as Pastor D.
Thank you for having me.
And then we have our very own executive pastor, the Reverend Dr. David Malcolm McGruder, a minister, historian, theologian, and emerging prophetic voice for the contemporary church. As I mentioned, Pastor McGruder currently serves as executive pastor of Friendship West Baptist Church. He's a graduate of Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia, where he was awarded the Martin Luther King Jr. Scholarship and Prize. Right. Princeton Theological Seminary in Princeton, New Jersey, where he was awarded the Aaron E. Gass Prize in Urban Ministry. He is also a graduate of the Wilson College, Cambridge, in the United Kingdom, where he specialized in Tudor history from 1485 to 1603, writing a dissertation on the role of religion, theology, and law in shaping racial constructs during the Tudor age. Pastor McGruder takes pride in his family and remains dedicated to his faith, scholarship, and service to the community. His greatest joy is being the devoted husband of Toya Marie McGruder of Fort Worth, Texas. Let's welcome back to the classroom our executive pastor, the Reverend Dr. David Malcolm McGruder.
Thank y'all for having me.
Yeah, some things have changed since last time you was on classroom.
I guess it has been a minute, huh? Yeah, I gotta figure out how to get Rev, how you get worked into the weekly spots. You gotta show me how I can become a co-host. Because it's been a minute. Yeah.
He's married now. He wasn't married the last time you were on the show. We were having this conversation about men. So it's gonna be
wow, that is interesting.
yes.
Oh, wow,
So this is gonna be really good dialogue on today. So just to kind of refresh and kind of set the tone for today. So we started this season off with like joy as a witness. In light of everything we have going on, we thought let's first start with what does it mean for us not to lose our joy in the terms of what we see going on day to day and what we're hit with and bombarded with every single day. And then we shifted to having a conversation on, what does it mean to build community? And then we moved to what does it mean to have let me back up. So build community as it relates to African and African American religion and faith, right? We talked about the diasporic community with Asmira and Elam. We kind of like, how do we see ourselves as part of this sixth region dedicated by by Africans known as the African diaspora? We are the sixth region, the 5 regions being on the continent. What does it mean for us not to run away from what it means to be African, but also leaning into the fact that blackness, what it means to be black looks different in different places. But that we all have some common things and common threads we need to build on to have more unified diasporic community. And then we brought in Sarah, who is Pakistani. And then we had Angelo, who is Native American and Puerto Rican. Yeah. So we also talked about how we also look at the global majority, right? Kind of like that Karen Hunter and Greg Carr often talk about, that we are the majority as it relates to non-white peoples in the world. And so we had that conversation. What does it mean to reclaim story and how do we connect? So I guess you could say we went from like macro, and today I want to now pull all the way in to what it means as we have this conversation around us as Black folks born here in America, looking at what we're up against. How do we really build the village? And so I want to start here, because it'll take us out to have more conversations. So I want to pick up on, I guess a few seasons ago, I had you and Pastor McGruder on, and we talked about what does it mean, Stacey. We had this conversation around how do Black women and Black men learn to like each other before we even get to like what does it mean to be romantic, to fall in love, to have family. What family looks different too, right? In this day and age, but like fundamentally, what does it mean for us to even like each other, right? I saw several posts the other day, and it was men just commenting on different things, and they said it different ways, and one said it very plainly, and he said, "I like having sex with women, I just don't like women."
Ouch.
And I have been saying for a while that some men, they're heterosexual, right? But they only like women for sexual pleasure. They don't want to deal with women in terms of emotional, spiritual connections. It's just about the physical, and that's it. And they hang with the boys the rest of the time, right? And so we're back here having this conversation. I think some of it is obviously when it comes to social media, everything on there you can't believe is also in your algorithms, which was being pushed to you, right. AI generated. But we also have our personal experiences that we could talk about. And so let's just start there at foundationally as we then talk about other things in community. I think first we have to, let's talk about how we can build stronger bonds with one another and what we see out there with our own experiences or what we just witness and what people tell us is going on. How do we learn to be more in community with one another so that we can then talk about the other ways we build a strong village? I think that has to be foundational to any village that we build. And I'm just going to allow y'all to jump in, whoever wants to go, and go for it.
So I would love to start this conversation. And first, let's talk about, base human experience. So according to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the base needs are food, clothing, shelter, security, sex. It is a biological need. So a lot of folks, when there is no desire to get past those base needs, it's that not that it is okay, because we do aspire to get to those different higher levels of thinking and being able to interact with each other, where eventually we get to self actualization, which is, that higher level of thought that talks about community, that talks about thinking, outside of what's it for me thought. Now, I will say this as someone who has uh, been married twice, but also divorced twice, is that there's a lot of intentionality that has to take place in not taking personal experiences and putting them on the entire gender. Yes, I've had some unpleasant experiences with two Black men in particular.
Mm-hmm.
However, I have to note that that is not applicable to all Black men and
Mm-hmm.
should not be the standard in which I view people. So that's just my 2 cents for right now.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, that's good. Um, to kind of flow with that, I think whenever I do premarital counseling or have conversations about marriage, one of the things I kind of lean in with and kind of start with is the idea that relationship, the way I describe it metaphorically, is the collision of two histories. You have these two oftentimes competing and sometimes divergent experiences that are now crashing in the same space. And I think one of the things that kind of show up in that marital car accident, if you will, or even relational car accident, is how our theologies, our experiences kind of show up in that space. And so when you mentioned the post about how this guy likes to have sex with women, but doesn't like women, I think oftentimes our theology kind of allows us to kind of get there, especially from a westernized, Americanized context, because we are oftentimes preached to and taught and socialized to see women as an object, a prize to be won, and something to get something from. And so oftentimes men don't have sex with women. They're having sex for their own benefit with this space, this object. And so there is no relationship being formed because women, again, we don't even endow agency oftentimes upon women in many spaces. And so we aren't even approaching a woman as someone to have equitable relationship with. We're approaching it as someone that we get something from. And then so conversely, I think oftentimes women sometimes show up in spaces where, I can't show up as myself because one, who am I in this space? Because I've been framed and taught theologically that everything I do is about him. When you get married, your body is no longer your own. All these conversations we know we have. And so I think, all that kind of crashes into the space. And I think really kind of creates this environment where we don't know how to be in relationship. So which kind of, again, begins with the challenge, and also should begin with an untethering of some toxicities that we've embraced and that have been embedded into our psyche, and oftentimes our theology. That's my core.
Well, that's good stuff. Just a way to kick in the door with the questions, Pastor Ayers. Just a great way to just kind of, just knock it all down. But yeah, it is the comment is an unfortunate comment, and at the same time, maybe it does represent how people think and feel in this day and age. As I was listening to Pastor Madison, I was thinking about, how much of our theology does kind of create that kind of environment. But then I'm also thinking about how many people, I'm wondering if that comment came from somebody who was churched, right? So it's almost like,
Right.
Okay, well, if it's not the theology, what is producing that, right? But at another level, the challenges that we have, and I think this is true for those of us who believe in freedom and justice and equality, that when we talk about equality, what we're talking about is equality of opportunity. we're not necessarily talking about equality of being. And that what I mean by that is not anything deficient about a woman or anything deficient about a man compared to a woman. It's just to recognize that when we talk about equality, we have to also recognize the presence of and the fact of difference. And I don't think we, at least, I think so much of the ideology of justice, freedom, liberation, and equality is just that. It's the language of freedom, justice, liberation, and equality without a clear kind of appreciation for the distinctions and the differences that exist between the genders. And so if I'm, preaching a notion of equality, then there might be an expectation that you're going to be the same way that I am, right? And that ain't the case, right? And, my wife is freedom, justice loving, and, but we're different. As justice, I think I'm pretty pro justice. I don't know. Sometimes she might wonder, but I'm joking. I'm Huey Newton at home. But the point being, despite that approach to liberation, freedom, justice, and equality, I want the same thing for her that I want for me. We're different, and if we don't respect that difference, it makes it very difficult for us to coexist and be together. So part of what I think I hear in the comment, as terrible and problematic and deleterious as it is a brother who doesn't understand the differences between men and women, like can observe them, but maybe doesn't necessarily understand those differences. And I think, I think it's true for both of it, for both sides of the equation, that, there is a challenge in this season. I appreciate the way Reverend Brown kind of kicked in the door with her answer, right? That there is an element of this that is about how much are we willing to, and I've said this before, stretch across the gap of our ignorance, right? And how much are we willing to educate each other across the gap of that ignorance and be willing to hear and understand each other. And so I really think that's really the challenge, is how do we get, number one, each other to understand the fact of difference, and then how do we generate enough curiosity, right, for us to continue to investigate that difference after the, adult things have been done. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
How do I stay engaged?
That's right.
Right, to continue to learn and continue to grow. Then we also have to, and this is my opinion, this is where I'm going to get off the soapbox, because Pastor Erin says she's not going to get in it. She said she's just going to mix it up, right? The other challenge is, this is the other challenge, and I wonder, the degree to which we have made what was previously sacred between men and women no longer sacred, to such a degree that then I can view, to Reverend Madison's point, we can view each other as objects. Men view women as sex objects. Women might view men as, success objects, right? Depending on how you see, view, and interpret and understand that thing. So another element of it is I think we have to return to, and I think this is true, especially for those of us, again, who believe in freedom, justice, and equality. We got to return to the sacred. What does it mean to name a thing as sacred and holy? Because if nothing is holy, right, or rather, if everything is sacred, then nothing is unholy. And if nothing is unholy, then nothing is sacred. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that's another challenge that we've got to deal with, in terms of mending the bridge between the genders.
Yeah, that's good. I was thinking about the scene from Think Like a Man, Act Like a Lady.
Was it the Steve Harvey?
Yeah, the
Steve Harvey movie.
Yeah.
Steve Harvey.
Act like a lady, think like a man.
Act like a lady, think like a man. Yes, 1 and 2. But the first one, I don't know if you remember the opening scene where it was like, back in the day, men had to get married to get what they wanted. And then they went to another scene, but not today.
Sure.
Men get what they want to. They can go in and get what they want. And they're showing like these women, right, not really dressed, like bikinis. And it's almost like you got a smorgasbord, right? Yeah. And I'm just wondering, even in that, to your point, Pastor McGruder, what we need to return to, because some of it I think has to do with how we've been socialized too, right?
Okay. Yes.
Some of that is a socialization process. And so what if we were to go back and grab what it meant in ancient Africa to have appositional unity, what it means for us not to have these hard fact, man, woman, man do this, woman do that, and man, what you do is up here, woman, what you do is down here, this hierarchical way of viewing human value, really, and what you offer. And then the appositional unit was, no, We together. It could be I may run the market in my household, but then you may run the market in your household. But it's not diminishing anyone. It's just saying these are the roles that we play for the benefit of not only our family but community. That's right. Right. Yeah. And I think some things to your point, some things we need to go back and grab from way back. Not even during enslavement what we did. I'm talking about back in Africa, where we were, where women were pharaohs who owned land, who signed deeds. But at the same time, some stayed at home, raised the children, right? This understanding that we have various roles that we play in respecting those roles, right? And so...
But that has to do, Pastor, excuse me, but that has to do, I think, too, with difference. Yeah. Right? Going back to respecting that difference, right? That different strokes for different folks. What might work in one situation or relational dynamic might not work in another. So, it gets even more to the heart of understanding and respecting the differences that exist, not just between, to your point, male and female, but within, it's different types of men, right? It's different types of women, right?
That's
it's different types of, and then there's different types of ways to engage that difference. And so I think, to your point, that's critical to understand and critical for us to say.
And
I'd also like to, I'm sorry,
no, go ahead.
I'd also like to bring in another aspect of this in bringing in the socialization aspect that you alluded to earlier, Dr. Ayers. In this society, we are basically entrenched with capitalistic thinking. And I say that because we have gone from being more relational to transactional.
Right.
It is what you can give me. It is also a view of either win or loss. Either I win or I lose. So in coming within these transactions with respect of relationship, a lot of people are viewing it from that purview. Either I get everything I want, or I'm going to give you nothing. Either you give me everything I desire, or I call it a loss. And it's viewing, like I said, with these transactions, because I gave you attention, or I gave you a meal, I gave you a date, therefore you give me other things, then the transaction's complete. So why do I need to maintain relationship? So when we begin to see it from that purview and understanding that we need to reset that type of thinking from being more capitalistic in our way of being black and white and just minimal transactions, I think we can begin to have that broader conversation of understanding differences.
Pastor, can we just get Brooke to hit her with the applause button after
go
that?
ahead.
After that good sermon she just got finished preaching. That's right.
Right.
Take the collection plate after that.
It's awesome time. But in response to both of those things, one of the things that came to mind when you were talking, and then you kind of echoed it behind that, this idea again and of difference and Dr. Jeremiah Wright said it better. Best, that different that does not mean deficient, right? And so, just because we have these different spaces, these roles, and how we show up, doesn't mean that there's deficiency in that difference. But I think part of the challenge in that, though, is that we are not taught to even learn ourselves to know how we show up in these spaces.
Yes.
Oftentimes women are told how they're supposed to show up in these spaces. Men are told how we're supposed to show up in these spaces. This is what men do. This is what women do. And so it's crafted oftentimes by capitalism, by commodification of humanity, and so if a man doesn't make this much money, if a man doesn't know, or if a woman can't do X, Y, Z, so it's kind of hard to express and own your difference because you are measuring yourself against a benchmark that you've been told defines you. Now, and then back to your point about the whole equality thing, I was listening to a Jewish scholar actually yesterday. And he was actually breaking down the language in the Torah, and how the word rib has been grossly misinterpreted, and so how when you actually look at the term in the original context, the word rib actually speaks to, it's an architectural term, which means, and we see it show up again in the Ark of the Covenant, and so that the word rib actually speaks to something being divided into two equal sections. So versus in the creation narrative, even being pulled from his side, it split in two where they're both equal parties. Now if we wrestle with that, if that again, So if we just rest with that culture for for a minute, just imagine how differently we could see each other in relationship, and even to you, and back into again how we view each other, back in the continent. How if I view you as someone who was equal with me from the onset, if I can view you differently, from again my theology, again I go here, if I can view you as somebody who is not my lesser part, someone that is deficient from me because you came out of my side, or a lesser part of me, but you are God designed us to be equals. Now, even if we're different, but we can walk together in concert. Then that actually helps us to navigate the relationship better, because I see you as fully human. I see you with agency. I see you matter in your existence. And so I think we have to wrestle with how we see each other and how we know ourselves and how we show up with each other.
Sure.
Absolutely. I think that would really lean into also the discussion about submission. When, all the folks want to talk about, why submit to your husband. But really, when you look at the translation of that word submit, it wasn't about domination. It was more of really in the Hebrew, it was more of a military term, meaning support, meaning I got your six, you got my six. It was about allyship. And that really speaks to what you were saying about the two separate entities, man and woman, being equal, but just having different parts in which they excel at, but yet having relationship with each other where I can cover you in areas in which you are maybe lacking, you can cover me in areas and maybe where I am lacking, and it not seeing it as a negative thing, and an aspect of where we complete each other, but rather where we complement each other, and still stand alone as two complete and whole individuals worthy of honor. I think when we begin to dissect that theology, where we're not looking at women as lesser than or men as higher than, then we can have a completely different conversation as to why this young man felt that women were just here for his sexual pleasure.
So I'm gonna say this, and then I'm gonna ask you one final question in here, so we can kind of shift to how we might move forward. As you all were talking, I was thinking about. I think it speaks to what Pastor McGruder was saying, well, what all you were saying, but definitely Pastor McGruder in terms of you got different. All men are not the same, just like all women are not the same. So I want to hear from the male perspective here, and then we'll do women, but. All this chatter that you see around not all, but some black men calling like Russell Wilson and people like him a simp, right? Because he loves his wife, takes care of his children, et cetera, et cetera. They say he's being that because of whenever they have anything to say about Sierra and Russell, that's what he's a simp. I'm like, what is that? Like, I never knew that was a thing. So how do we allow for men to, now, for women, we would say we're living our soft life, right? How do we make space for that, though, for men to be in relationship with a woman in a way that works for them and where he feels comfortable without us really having this public narrative and making it seem like it's something you shouldn't do?
Yeah, I don't know if I don't think a lot of people. First of all, shout out to Russell Wilson. Let's hit Russell Wilson with an applause. Can we give Russell Wilson an applause? Shout out to Russell Wilson. They had a terrible loss Sunday. He just got benched, so I don't want to ride the brother too bad because he just got replaced by a rookie. You know what I'm saying, up there in New York. And I know the Giants fans are probably he got a sigh of relief going this morning. So we don't want to ride Russell Wilson too hard. But I think part of the challenge is, and this feels like celebrity gossip too much, but. I think some of it is rooted in how we understand relationship in our community, right? And how we understand relationship. So, in our community, we got a whole different lexicon than everybody else, how we see relationships. So, I don't think there's anything wrong with Russell Wilson loving his wife. I don't think there's anything wrong. I want to be very clear. All right, we might have to hit him with another applause after this. I don't think there's anything wrong. People have anything negative to say about Russell Wilson loving his wife. The question that I think the way that I hear it framed is, does his wife love him? And I can't get into that because I'm not there. I'm not in it. I'm just saying in terms of how we want to frame it, I think that's so important. I don't think there's anything wrong with loving a woman, and I don't think the hood has any problem with loving a woman, right? At least they shouldn't. But I think so much of what gets mixed up in here is really comes down to this word, and that is going back to Adam, responsibility, right? And we got to learn to see and maybe think of relationships, and maybe it would help us if we saw and understood relationships as responsibility, right? And I think a lot of what we're seeing and understanding is we got to deal with the fact that going back to something that I heard Reverend Madison say is about the scripts that we get about manhood, and I wonder if in our community we have enough of those positive scripts running. That we've got like scripts, but they're like running in the background, like they're things that you see and observe. But I don't really see a whole lot of, men taking young men down, sitting them down, and explaining to them this is what manhood is. They'll do that when it comes to like being a Crip, being a GD, being a BD, being a Blood. Like they'll show you how to do that, but not necessarily to be a man. And there's ways in which those things get conflated, right? Manhood is this is my version. Right? At the end of the day, manhood is about responsibility. It's about responsibility. And the question is, who are you responsible for? So the question about Russell Wilson being a simp is rooted in the fact that we're seeing or watching a man assume responsibility for a child that is not his, but that he said is my responsibility. So I think that's really what it boils down to. It's not necessarily that he loves his wife. It's about the fact that we're watching a man assume responsibility. And that's rare in our communities, to watch men assume responsibility willingly, to open, like without complaint. That's a difficult thing for us to understand. I think that's really what is rooted in. And I think so much of that, going back to, and I'll just round out the comment about, needing more spaces where men communicate to men, this is what manhood actually is, as opposed to borrowing those scripts from movies and stuff. And I think, so much of the simp narrative around, again, shout out to Russell Wilson and the Giants, is, again, rooted in the fact that we're not clear. I don't think a lot of men are clear, or young men at least, about what their responsibility is, right? And so it's strange. If you grew up in a household and, you watched your mother, date different men and nobody ever stood up, stepped up to say, okay, I'm a, marry your mama and I'm gonna make you, my stepson. Well, then, yeah, seeing somebody do that with $1 million, with multi-million dollars and, see somebody do that, that does feel, shame inducing, right? Especially if you got, multiple baby mamas. I'm not down to nobody, for doing what, but if you got multiple baby mamas and you've never stepped up and you never made a honest woman, like your baby mama, well then, yeah, what Russell Wilson is doing looks strange because you've never assumed responsibility for anything. We run around talking about what the rights that we're supposed to have in the relationship, but nobody wants to talk about the responsibilities that come with it. It's just like getting a driver's license, right? Just because you got a driver's license, that means that you can drive a car. But it doesn't mean that you understand the importance of getting an oil change every 3,000 miles, right? That's the responsibility that comes with the right. And so I think it goes both ways, right? What is my wife's responsibility to me? What is my responsibility to her? What is our responsibility to each other? And by virtue of that, watch this. What's our responsibility to our family? See now, what's my responsibility to my aging mother now that I'm married?
Yeah, right.
And now that there's another woman in the picture, right? And her oldest son is, is a little distracted now, right? What's my responsibility to her? What's my responsibility to my siblings? What's our responsibility to her father, to her extent, right? So you see how that basic assumption of responsibility for each other ripples out and extends itself out. And so I think if we come to understand our relationship as a responsibility to each other. People don't like hearing that because it feels like very boring. It feels like very mechanical. But going back to Adam, God put him in the garden and said, all right, you got all this fruit, but this is what you're responsible for.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
You can go and hit him with a hand clap because I got something to say after that.
Amen.
I'm only gonna say this. I'm gonna move on because I want Reverend Madison and Reverend Stacey to respond. So, and I guess it's interpretation, right? So, when just reading comments and when people respond that way, I don't know if it's all tethered to the fact that he's assuming responsibility for a child that's not his, because sometimes it'll say, "Oh, Russell did this for Sierra," he being a simp. I'm like doing something for her, but you're saying from your perspective, it's some people may see it as, does she love him? That's why he a simp because they don't think she loves him.
Well, how did the baby got here through? It came through. See, when they got together, Sierra had this child, right? So when they see, so this is again just my best interpretation. To see her do something to see him do something for her is to be taken back to the child that she had with Future. Y'all know Future. I know we got
Who
a
got
whole bunch
all
of
the
preachers in her.
kids.
Who got now? See, I don't even want to go there,
But
right?
he does.
But
That's true.
now see, and men see that. Men see that. Men see, oh, okay, so Russell Wilson is stepping up and marrying you, but you didn't have a problem with, you know what I'm saying? And again, whether or not that's right or wrong, men observe that.
So wait a minute. So men observe what her and Future's relationship.
Yeah, men observe, right. Yep.
Do we know how she was treated with him?
I understand. Well, I'm not taking the side as much as I'm just trying to as much as I'm trying to say, how about this? Understanding difference. And going back to understanding difference, right? That's a difference between men and women, right? That is I think a difference between the genders, is how we read those things into relationship. That Future can have, Future got a bunch of kids, but that doesn't stop women from signing up for more.
That's a whole nother podcast. But that's something we ought to talk about.
We got to
But
talk
that's
about
something we
it,
have to talk about.
especially as we go back to again relationship being about what responsibility.
But,
Right.
but it's the responsibility that leads us to be able to have a strong village,
Right.
where we understand what it means to build something that's sustainable, that you can pass on. What do you pass on for the next generation to the next generation, so we don't fall into toxic cycles of what it means? Because I think it goes back to not fully understanding who you are as a human.
Okay.
It's something that's missing. It's something that you haven't tapped into. It's something about I don't believe you can do. It's almost like Francis Cress Welsing said, you can't. Oh, I can't say that language on the. Francis Cress Welsing.
It's your show. You say what you want to say. What you mean you can't say it?
That's connected to Friendship West Baptist Church.
Oh, amen. Never mind.
I'm just a guest.
Nah, you the co-host. So you can't get out. You don't get out of being the co-host.
Okay.
But it's something about when she said, you can't, she said about us, this is what she wrote years ago, that you can't convince me that we can go around calling ourselves B's, H's, N's, and thugs all the time and think we're going to produce something great out of it. Right. And I'm just saying that that's a real conversation we have to have. But I feel like in this day and age, when you try to have that conversation, some people make you feel shamed about
you and
saying
those respect. That's respectability politics. You and this respectability politics,
and that has gone too far, in my opinion. Because some of the thing about respectability politics, some of it's about what it means to be respectable, and what it means for us to really tap into who we are as Africans. That's what I'm saying. Sure. Well, that's another conversation. What were you gonna say?
No, I was going.
And then Reverend Brown, like you want to jump in too.
Yeah, no. Just kind of piggyback on some of what Pastor McGruder was saying, and kind of just even just share some lived experience, right? So, my pops, my stepfather, he's one of those who stepped in, right? My father, biologically, he was living. He was somewhere, but it's my pops who stepped in. And so I think part of that, experientially, is not just about responsibility, I think it's also how we define strength. I think we have to wrestle with that because I think far too often, especially in our community, we define, and I'm from the hood, so
Shot Town,
Southside,
right?
Shout out to that Shot Town,
right? He's
I'm from the hood,
legitimate.
Man, I'm from right down the street, man. I know how to get to Chicago. I know about 89th and Kilbourne, man. I know about Southside, and the West Side is worse. But go ahead.
right,
Oh, yeah,
100%,
right.
But again, oftentimes we define strength by bravado. Right. We define strength by, how many kids you can produce. We oftentimes define strength by, how well you can fight, or even how much money you can make. Right. So we're defining strength by all these tangible commodifications oftentimes, and so we're not measuring or weighing in the emotional strength that it takes to even raise a child that's not your own. To look at somebody who does not have your DNA
That's good.
and say, you're my responsibility.
It's my responsibility. Yeah.
I'm going to show up for you despite the fact that the one who made you won't. I'm going to be here. And I live that myself. And I have friends who are in that exact same situation to this day, right now, who are raising kids that are not their own. Why? Because they have the strength to do so. And so I think we have to measure and work through what do we mean by manhood, right? Because again, manhood, to your point about difference, it does not show up the same way in every space.
Right.
Because in some spaces, a strong man is a stay-at-home dad.
Right.
Why? Because he has the wherewithal and the capacity to do so. He can cook, he can clean, he can organize, he's structured, and maybe the wife is the one that, hey, she has the income and that's cool. But together they're holding things down.
Right.
And so we really have, and so it doesn't mean that he's weak.
Right. Correct.
But it's what works for them. And again, now, so how do we respect that strength that may show up differently? Now, however, just because you can be different does not mean you dismiss yourself of the responsibility. So if I'm going to be in the space and be different, I got to be in 100%. So if I'm going to be your daddy, if I'm going to be your father and say, okay, I'll take care of you, that means I can't demean you. I can't remind you you're not mine.
Right.
I can't, every chance I get mad at her, I get mad at you because you ain't mine. I can't use you as a weapon. I can use you as a tool for negotiation.
Right.
And so we got to make sure that we measure this thing out and be strong enough to be integritous and again, honor humanity in the process.
Right.
Because again, all that shows up in real time.
That's right.
Ooh. Give him a hand too, Brooke.
No, but you spoke to something that was really good, Rep, did I cut you off, Rev?
No, go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was just going to go back. Something because I thought that Reverend Madison's point was really good here. And it reminds me again of this concept of mutuality. That we're also learning the scripts from the other gender. That's something I don't want us to rush past, right? That it's not just men telling men how to be men.
Yeah.
Women also tell men
Real talk.
how to be. And watch this. I would even venture to say, I might disagree. I would even venture to say that men are actually more willing to take their scripts about manhood from, at least in our community, from women more than they are to take them from other men. Because if you got to watch this, because 9 times out of 10, if you got a man who's willing to tell you about this is what a man is, he's 9 times out of 10 not instructing you wrong. This is what I mean by that. He's at least trying to put you on the right path because it's just so rare. It's just a rare thing to have happen, right? That's why the DOP, Boys Mentoring Program, is so important and so necessary because there's just not enough of that happening. And so what does that mean? That means that the boys are getting their scripts on manhood from their mothers, from their sisters, I'm saying a part of it. I'm not saying all. I'm saying a part of that.
Yeah.
So going back to this idea of mutuality, going back to this idea of responsibility, it's so important for us to understand like I said, the multivalent way in which gender informs gender. Right? So it's not just brothers men don't just get bad habits about manhood from the barbershop. They do get them from the barbershop sometimes. Not my barbershop in particular. My barbershop is great, Holy Ghost filled, 5 baptized, but you can go in the barbershop and get some bad information. Now, that's not the only place that you get what I'm saying? But it's not just there that you get bad scripts about manhood. They often actually come from how we try to engage from our earliest lessons, trying to engage the other gender, and what did they experience? What did they get? What was their home life like? What were their expectations of what a man was supposed to be? And so I just wanted to, I think that is just so important as we talk about mending the brokenness, mending the relationships. And that becomes important then because if, for single mothers, it's about, okay, what's my responsibility to my single boys? Not just my children. I mean, to my boys, not just my children generally, but specifically to my sons who I want to see grow up to be X, Y, Z. And I think that's really a place where we see, again, the maybe what we would call toxic masculinity. I don't know if that's a term that we would use, right?
Yeah.
But,
What I would use,
I want you to show up to Diop on Monday night. And I want you to listen to women talk about the kinds of men that they want their sons to be. These are women that go to this church, love justice, love Jesus. But when you hear them describe the men that they want their sons to be,
Yeah.
okay? So, and as much as it's on us as brothers to, you know what I'm saying, be a good example and
Yeah.
to set a solid example. And we need more Reverend Madisons to be in the place and space to show us how to do, you know, what it is. But we also got to see and understand the converse side. And so my question is, what are the conversations about manhood and masculinity
Yeah.
that women are having?
Reverend Stacey.
Privately.
I love this segue.
Reverend Stacey, let's
I
go.
love this segue. Now listen.
I'm gonna let the guests go first. Yeah,
I
come
mean,
on.
let me talk about it from the perspective first as a single mother myself,
Yes.
who has two boys, age 18 and age 12. I understood when I became a single mother that I would have the onus of painting relationship between men and women by the relationship that I had with their fathers. So if there was an I set the expectation from beginning when after I experienced my first divorce that it was a package deal. That if you were going to have me, you were going to have my son, and you were going to treat him with respect as if he were your own. Because that expectation was set at the beginning, there were many people who didn't want to have that responsibility. And so they automatically knew that that was not something that was going to work. However, when I got married again, because there was that expectation there then was an understanding that because you've taken on this responsibility, there is no space to demean him. When you said I do to me, you said I do to him. And so therefore there is no separation. That's yours. That's yours right there. However, when there was a separation from my children's uh fathers, I didn't put the failures that there was in the relationship. I did not transfer that over into their relationship with their dad as respect to how they fathered. Wow, there was definitely some shortcomings in the marriage when it came to them and their roles as fathers. They were and still are excellent. And so I'm going to ensure that that view of my children, of their dads, is maintained by not demeaning them, by not talking trash about, well, their daddy is this and this and this and no, we're not going to do that. Just as I would expect that same level of respect and how they talk about me outside of my presence to be the same level that you talk about me in my presence, I'm going to reciprocate that. Now, I will say that we have to acknowledge that hurt people hurt people. And so a lot of women are painting or rather projecting their hurt that they had with these men in a relational aspect of either, baby daddy and baby mama or husband or wife. And they're putting the expectation on the children to now choose sides. And you can't treat your dad with the same respect because I'm the one that's here doing this and doing that and doing that. But in order, I think sometimes to maintain that narrative that I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm doing this, there isn't an allowance of fathers to come in and maintain or have established those relationships. Because it's easier for me to keep the narrative as a victim because that doesn't require any responsibility. I garner sympathy. But if I'm trying to change the perspective of, and change the narrative to one where we have collaboration and there's a village, because really and truly, it's not just about the mom and the dad. It's about the grandmothers, it's about the aunties, it's about the cousins, it's about all of that happen when you join two families together. And so if there's not an understanding that uh, once we go together, we are family, regardless of whether we are tethered together legally or not. And so there will be a respect with whether the kids are with grandma. She's not going to talk about mom crazy. Or the other grandma, she's not going to talk about dad crazy. It's the setting of the expectation, by me as the mother and by their father, that, we are going to ensure that we're not passing on those same toxic views to our children. And this is coming from someone, who was raised in a family where my parents were together until my father's passing. And so, even though that is something that I didn't view, it is something that I wanted to ensure was passed on. Because I think sometimes we say that just because people didn't necessarily see it modeled, that they're not capable of exuding those behaviors that will facilitate good relationships for their children, right? And so we have to get rid of those excuses and really get down to what is it that you truly want to see, because people are going to make happen what they want to happen regardless. So I think some of these negative behaviors and these holding on to toxic views is because there some way deep down there is a desire to keep that dysfunction. There is a desire to again maintain that win-loss. There is a desire to keep that division, and we need to have conversations about that. Why is there this desire to keep this narrative of division?
Hit her,
So-
hit her with the applause button. Can we
Yeah.
hit her with the applause button?
So, and I would say on the other side of responsibility is also we have to have some accountability. Because I think that's what's missing in many instances, that people are just not held accountable for their own behaviors, attitudes, and actions. And they can be explained away, or it's that men will be men, boys will be boys, or that's what women do. And so we're not holding each other accountable. So let me do this because we don't ran out of time. I didn't get to none of my questions. But I just think it's so important that before we even talk about what it means to be married and have family, what does it mean for us to even like each other just in platonic ways, right? To respect each other in ways. So let's do this. I want each of you to tell me what is the one thing you would say for the men, what men could do, and then Stacey, for you, what can women do to begin to bridge this, it's not, I don't want to call it a gap, certainly fractures, I maybe say it that way, that exist in our community.
Yeah, I'll go first.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, I can go first. Yeah, I think men have to do the hard work of feeling, and then do the difficult work of translating those feelings so that your partner can understand what it is that. So I think that's definitely one of the, because I'm not sure if men lean into what they feel all the time, right? I think part of the script that we get is that men can't feel, that they should not feel. So I think it's important for men to do the important work of not being emotional, but being in touch with what it is that you feel, and then being able to communicate that and articulate that to your partner so that your needs can be met. I think that's a real need that men have.
And so in that kind of situation, what about just, sisters that you got to interact with, in a club, or club meaning like something like NYCP, like just every day.
Same thing. I would say
You
the same thing. I would
thing.
say the same thing. I think that it is so important for brothers to just kind of lean into what it is that you feeling, and then being able to like articulate and communicate that in a way that people can hear, and across the gap of difference and across the gap of ignorance. And so, part of it is the feeling work, but part of it is, I really think, is the translation work, right? Kind of understanding difference in the way, because people can hear stuff. We could be saying the same words, but hear a totally different thing, right? Here's something different.
Absolutely.
So how do so my challenge as a man is to translate what I'm thinking, experiencing, and feeling in the spaces with my sisters, feel it, and then translate it in a way that they can hear it and hear it and receive it. So an example is, I can be very stoic, and so I don't want that. So people might interpret that as being standoffish, right? So it's important for me to, when I'm in the space, to say, no, I'm actually just taking in, to consideration this and that, and thinking about this and I'm thinking about that, and so that's why, I'm just kind of, to myself. So it's not, being, rude or arrogant or standoffish. It's just that, when I come in here, I'm looking at everybody. I'm watching to see who the crazy people are. I want to know. My mind is on. Watch this. My mind is on the responsibilities.
Okay.
You understand? And so, but how do I first of all feel that and communicate that across the gap so that people can understand that? So I think that's one of the things that brothers got to do.
Good. Thank you for that.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
I would add to that, not only just feeling, but knowing. I think it's important for men to know who you are. And I think oftentimes, we sometimes define ourselves by our context, right? I want to be like so-and-so. I'm trying to be like so-and-so. I'm trying to mirror so-and-so. And you probably ain't got nothing in common with either one of them. And you may, if you may be artistic and they're an athlete, I mean, whatever, so I think one is, being able to know who you are and owning your own agency and how you show up in that space, because that helps you to identify your feelings, right? Because, while, person A may be an intellectual, may, be very observant, person B may be very insular. And so how you show up is going to be different, and even how you feel is going to be different because of who you are. So one, being able to know yourself, know your agency. But I think number two is that men have to be able to recognize the humanity in themselves and in women. We have to be able to recognize and honor the humanity, the agency, and not see women as a prize to be won, or as property to be obtained, or as an object to take over. But how do I engage with your humanity, your intellectuality, your emotionality, your spirit? How do I engage with you? And so, knowing and feeling helps to do that. So how am I meeting you as a human first?
Reverend Stacey. Close us out.
I would say for ladies, and really this advice can go to both the ladies and the men. I think we need to stop making so many assumptions and start having more conversations. I think a lot of this comes up, the interactions, because we make assumptions about what people are thinking, feeling, make assumptions about how they view the world, their perspective, and even their background, and that goes into expectations. I think a lot of us expect ourselves and other people, and that leads us to being consistently and constantly disappointed because no one is us. We are the only ones that are, of course, are us. And so when we begin to first understand and respect the differences of others and how they operate and where they have come from, their different perspectives and opinions, and begin to have a genuine and curiosity about who this person is and why they interact and do things in the way that they do, we can begin to really create an understanding and a respect and how to move forward and how to gain those relationships, whether platonic, professional, romantic, or otherwise, and establish that respect. So that's what I'll say, that we can do both as men and as women.
Well, thank you for that. Another thing I would add, and this would go for all of us, I think at the end of the day, it's a lot we need to do because we're in this United States context, but I feel like it still all goes back down to how do we understand what it means to be human. And I'm thinking about the African woman, the lawyer who posted the selfie. And everybody made the negative comments about her appearance. Yeah. And instead of taking it down, she posted more selfies and videos.
That's right.
Did.
Right. And so part of it, we got to love who we are physically, mentally, and spiritually, so that we don't then impose what we call beautiful.
Right.
And what's acceptable, because that feeds into how we even value one another or don't see the value, or how I treat you as an object, because I want her to have this Coca-Cola bottle shape. Therefore, it's something I'm possessing, right? This shape. So I would just say we got to learn just fundamentally. You know, there's a lot of stuff we got to do. We didn't get to the mental health piece that I wanted to talk about. But I think fundamentally it goes back to us asking the question, what does it mean to be human? How do we get there? And I do think looking back at what it means, particularly in ancient African traditions, I think we can find our answer there. In terms of even how you talked about if the man stays at home because he's structured, he does this, he does that. That's the apposition unity I'm talking about, where you respect the differences, but it makes you stronger together. And so, but definitely, I think that's where we can start. We didn't get to any of my questions I wanted to get to. But I just think this is a big thing, right? And we didn't get to it because Pastor McGruder asked the question. We can come back and have another conversation. May I bring some younger folks in on this conversation? Because he asked, what conversations are women having about manhood? I think because we talk a lot about the men, right? Because we just kind of leaned in there, but I also think it's something on both sides we need to have conversations about. Because there's some stuff I think we need to be doing. And I'm a womanist. I would call myself a womanist scholarist, but there's some stuff I'm like, no, we're not gonna clump that in. I'm womanist or I'm feminist. Therefore, I think there's some. We got some attitudes, some action behavior patterns too that are not
hyper independent.
So it's something that superwoman, that whole superwoman, I reject that. It's a whole scholarship around that now, the superwoman schema that we can talk about. It's a whole thing written about. Like, it's some things that we need to address, and I think we have to get that now because of the situation we're in, socially and politically. We have to do work, but we have to do that hard work. So we can be this. So we can branch out. Now, what does it mean for our social and structural institutions? How do we build those? Because you can't build them when we're doing what we're doing. They're going to be, because we're going to bring that into the space, and we're just going to continue to replicate the bad behavior patterns that we might have. But I love me black men. I do. I tell people, my friends, I do. I love black people. I love our black men, but that doesn't mean we don't have to tell the hard truth. That we have to do truth telling so that we can be better.
Amen.
Yeah.
So thank you, Pastor Reverend Dr. David Malcolm McGruder, Pastor Dameon Madison, Pastor D, and Reverend Stacey Brown for being in the classroom on today. Really good conversation. There's never enough time. We're going to have to just continue to have this ongoing. We need to think about how we talked about this, about having like, I don't know if we said a panel or like I don't know what we called it, but something we really sit down and really have these real hard conversations where we can be open and not sugarcoat, but just have the real conversation. So we need to really talk about how we might do something like that. Maybe it's not in the church. We go outside community space and have these conversations. We should really do that because I think it's necessary. So thank you all for being here. This week's episode of Fannie Lou's Classroom. I want to remind you that we are starting our annual eye care drive where we are supporting so that's what I say, Howard Thurman Bible Institute. Well, we are
y'all can donate to that too. You're more than welcome. Please.
Well, we support Haynes Global Preparatory Academy located on the campus of Paul Quinn College. That is in effect. You can give a financial contribution that's in our Shelby, where you will see eye care. You can give to that. So we want to be a blessing to the students at HGP, not just in December. As you know, we support the school year round, even throughout the summer for special programming that they have. So thank you for being here. We look forward to seeing you next week right here in the classroom.
From the church house.